Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to episode 5, Cinco,
Go.
of One Email, Two Takes. We've got a catchy title thanks to my co-host, Will Allred, Clarity Slips, Mobile Trips, right? That's what we're going to be talking about today, high level. If you haven't tuned in before, thanks for joining us. A little bit about me is I'm Christina Finseth, and I lead growth marketing at a company called Interseller, which is a prospecting and outreach platform for recruiters and sellers.
Yes, I'm Will Allred. I'm one of the co-founders at Lavender. It's a real-time email assistant. We help salespeople write better emails faster. And so on One Email, Two Takes, we have the joy of taking these emails that we either receive or we work with individuals, and we get to showcase how we can write them differently, how we can write them better. Christina brings the perspective from her FIRE framework, a wonderful framework for writing cold emails that gets tons of responses. I bring the perspective of the millions of emails that we see every month at Lavender, and the data points that we're seeing drive actual response rates. So in my role, one of the things that I do is I spend a lot of time one-on-one with individual reps, going through emails that they're writing, one, so that I can learn what people are doing, where they're getting stuck, but two, just so that we can help people learn how to write better emails. And so the email today is actually an email that comes from one of those sessions. It was a new rep at a HR tech company. And this rep was, they'd checked out a couple LinkedIn posts that I had written and reached out asking if I could help with their emails. So the email starts with a subject line: open roles at Lavender. Hi name, saw you're growing your engineering team. Congrats. How are you finding the talent to fill your open tech roles at Lavender? I typically see other recruiters post and pray, but then they're disappointed when they get no qualified candidates and the role ends up staying open longer. Other tech companies like blank have been able to fill roles faster, especially those hard to fill ones, by using our sourcing tool. Before, they were sitting on open roles for too long since they were posting and praying, and they didn't get the right applicants. Is this interesting to you? Have you used a sourcing tool? This rep. So one of the things that I called out when I first read through this was, it has this like super strong start. I'm like, oh man, we're about to read a great email. And then we get into this like jumbled paragraph down here where it starts with other tech companies. And it's just like we lost our momentum, and we had this like massive slip in being clear. I don't know how else to say it. The other thing that comes from this this write-up is it actually creates a pretty terrible mobile viewing experience. So that other tech companies paragraph, it basically becomes like 6 lines on a mobile phone. So that first impression that you get, your email is 8 times more likely to be opened on a mobile phone. And so that first impression is pretty clunky now. Not to mention that it's not very clear at the get-go. Christina, what other thoughts did you have from your first impression of this email?
You definitely kind of sum that up. When I first started reading, I was like, ooh, okay, this is good. They cut some fluff in the beginning. This feels like it's going to be a good email. We might have a hard time breaking this one down. And then we got to that infamous other tech companies paragraph, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I was kind of sad. And mostly because it is confusing, and it's also very redundant to what was already kind of said in that, I typically see other recruiters post and pray component, right? So I feel like that was the one piece I just wanted to just solve for automatically, like band-aid it up, fix it up. And then, the double question at the end, I probably would have maybe change that up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I think it has so much potential. It just needs to be cleaned up.
I thought the double question at the end was kind of an interesting pattern break, right? Which is like, is this interesting to you? Have you used the sourcing tool? Which might be something that you would do in a normal conversation. I can tell you the data tells me that, one question is most likely to get a response. When you start to add 2 to 3, you're not necessarily going to fall off, but once you start getting past like 3 questions, you're tanking your chance of getting a response. So it's definitely something worth like an A/B test.
I agree with you. And it could be as simple as like combining the two,
Mhm.
which I did not do in my write-up, and I'm mentioning that now, but like, is this interesting? Hyphen, have you used the sourcing tool ? Like kind of making it one question, even though we all know it's 2 questions. I do that a lot too in some of my emails, and that tends to work. But yeah, I think overall, lots of potential here.
Yeah. Well, Christina, I haven't seen your rewrite, so I'm curious to dig in here.
I just rewrote this as I finished my coffee this morning, so bear with me. Here's my rewrite. So I decided to change this subject line. The subject line up here was open roles at Lavender. And in a way, I think that will probably get someone to open because maybe this is an applicant or a candidate, like outbounding, right? But I figured I'd just get a little bit more specific in saying like front end engineer role. She's talking about technical roles. So I was like, okay, let's go that direction. Hey, front end engineer role. This is priority for me. Will, I'm gonna shift to something you talk about all the time, and most people who have followed you for a while know, inbox triage. When I see this, I'm gonna know, crap, that's a role that's really important to fill right now. I better open this and see what the heck it is. So this is kind of playing on those heartstrings. But I said, Will, saw the job posting for a front-end engineer role at Lavender, thought I'd reach out. There should have been a hyphen here. But anyway, curious, do you normally wait for folks to apply or go out and hunt for candidates yourself? Asking because most founders don't have time to source talent themselves, creating a lag in time to hire, which is true. We're helping other companies like X save time on the founder-led recruiting process, tapping into passive talent with our sourcing platform. Open to exploring how we can do the same for Lavender. Cheers, rep.
It's a great email.
So I wanted to play on the fact, I mean, I'm just going to be real frank. I've been working in the recruiting and HR tech space for a while, so I feel like I might have had an unfair advantage on this rewrite. But I've also worked with a lot of founder-led sales teams, recruiting teams, et cetera. And so I know with certainty that if you position this the right way to a founder, and they're the ones who are owning part of this process, they're going to want to save time, right? And tap into the right talent. So I think that's probably where her value prop was going, is like, hey, we can help you to run this process without having to dedicate as much time, right? So that's kind of what I decided to hit on here. But yeah, that's my rewrite.
Yeah, well, you bring up something really interesting there, which is, by doing something simple, like segmenting out your prospecting list by founders, particularly earlier stage founders, you could easily create a template that would be much more relevant to that particular individual, right? Like just with like the straight up fact that you're reaching out to a founder in an early stage company, that first line, you could almost like delete it and you'd have something of value to add into the conversation that like me reading through, I'd be like, yes, that is relevant.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, if you look, just a tip for anyone who is selling into a founder-led process or, trying to hit on those heartstrings, I often try to look at companies that have less than, 50 employees. Typically, they don't have recruiting in-house, which means that responsibility is falling on leadership, whether it's department leadership, founder-led recruiting process, et cetera. That's where you really want to hit on anything that's going to save them time but make them more efficient.
Yeah.
Am I right on that? You're a founder. Yeah. So
no, what's interesting is like I'm thinking through my rewrite now and I'm looking at yours, and the likelihood that somebody could take your rewrite and scale it and actually like hit their quota is actually much more likely, because it just comes down to segmenting out your prospecting list, and then you've got a great email regardless of really who you're reaching out to. The approach I took was a bit more personal. So if you're reaching out to me, we have a product that you can engage with and like touch and feel, right? It's like if you reach out and you say, hey, Will, saw you're hiring a front-end engineer. Is this to build out more integrations, or is it for the dashboard? Imagine you're using LinkedIn as your main sourcing tool for candidates. How's that going? When I talk to most recruiting leaders, they're finding LinkedIn doesn't have the data they need. That's where we come in. We pull from the places where developers build. Think this could help your search. So, my approach was much more like, I'm going to focus on what I actually think you're working on, given my understanding of your product, given what's publicly available. It doesn't necessarily scale, but I can guarantee you I'd respond to this email just as much as I'd respond to Christina's. It always surprises me, running a product-led company, how few folks actually look at the product. It's like a pretty simple thing. Comes back to another email that I got where they had actually done all the research and done all those things, and they forgot to bring it up in the email. And like they waited until like email 3 to like show me a video of our cancellation process. And I was like, oh, you actually did the research. You just didn't make it obvious. Thinking about this, that's really what I was trying to get across. One of the other things that I wanted to point out is, showcasing the how's that going question. It's very conversation. It's very rhetorical. I know it's not going well. And so, but what I'm trying to do is create this almost peer-to-peer type relationship where I see so many SDRs coming in and almost going way too heavily formal. So working with companies like Uber, SpaceX, and whatever, we were able to increase their time to hire rate by 14%. And I'm like, I don't need an analyst. I just need someone to talk to about the problem that I'm having. And so I'm trying to showcase that it's okay to be more conversational in your email. The other thing is just like,
feels more approachable.
What's that?
I was just going to say, it feels very approachable, you're leaving yourself feeling like you're an approachable person that just genuinely wants to know, like, how's it going?
You're emailing a friend that you haven't met yet. Two different approaches. One of the things that actually came up in the conversation though was, and I hear this all the time. So we wrote a third version. I actually used Christina's FIRE framework to build this, which is what happens when you don't have something to personalize on? What happens when you have exhausted 10 minutes of your time trying to find something good, and you're just like, I don't know what to say. I don't have a good reason, right? So Christina, I'll let you lead this one off because it's actually your framework. So for me to try to speak to it, I wanted to present a third option. And so first, you can tell me how I did with your framework, but secondly, I'm curious to just sort of hear it from the source.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're giving you a bonus third rewrite here. One thing I do want to point out is like, you don't have to personalize everything. You'll see here that this was more of a segmentation level of personalization where it's going to feel more specific to that person. My CEO, Steve, usually says, find 3 points of personalization that you can use in the event that that hyper personalization is not available. So whether that's geography, industry, in this case, we're doing founder-led recruiting, specifically looking at engineering roles, right? Maybe front-end engineering roles, companies that are less than X employees and don't have a recruiter on staff, right? That's like 3 points of segmentation here or personalization. But in this rewrite, and I didn't get to read it yet, what if I don't know how to personalize? I'm a big fan of taking the subject matter expert approach. I'll talk about that a lot probably as much as Will talks about inbox triage. So this is approach that I find works really well. And it's usually just saying, first name. So I'll just say Will. When I talk to founders or recruiting leaders, they're typically struggling with one of two things, right? They're not getting enough candidates for open roles. They're not able to quickly qualify the candidates that apply. We're helping recruiters or founders, whatever, with both. We're helping recruiters with both by pulling from resources like GitHub, et cetera. Think this could help your team. It's short, it's sweet, it's broken up into a way that's really easy to be read. Thank you, Will. At first I was like, wait, what are you're helping with both by pulling? And I was like, oh, with both, both of these problems. But yeah, I mean, you can get specific here too. If you have, the only change I'd maybe make here is like, if you had another like company to Lavender that you were supporting, you could say we're helping the recruiting team at Lavender by pulling from resources like GitHub and helping them to fill critical engineering roles. I think this could help your team. But other than that, I think you did pretty well at taking a stab at this. So, and this is scalable. You don't really have to do much. This could be sent to almost anyone and tested. So,
yep. Awesome. Well, cool. If you haven't already, show up we do office hours every other Monday with Sales Hacker. So we're rewriting emails on the fly for folks. We're answering email questions, like what do I do when I don't know how to personalize? But by all means, drop emails within a Sales Hacker thread we've got going, and we can rewrite them there as well. But episode 5 is a wrap up. Stay tuned for episode 6.